You may be familiar with the passage in James where James says, "I will show you my faith by my works." In the stories in the Gospels of Jesus' miracles that he performed, we have a particular miracle where it specifically says that Jesus saw someone's faith. That's the terminology that is used. The story is found in Matthew, Mark, and Luke. I'm going to take my reading out of Luke chapter 5, verse 17 through 26. Jesus is actually in Capernaum, and this is a place, of course, that is his headquarters. Though he was born in Bethlehem and moved to Egypt and lived in Nazareth, he eventually moved to Capernaum, and that was his place of residence at the beginning of his ministry. In Luke chapter 5, verse 17, it says, "It came to pass on a certain day, as he was teaching, that there were Pharisees and doctors of the law sitting by, which were come out of every town of Galilee," big crowd, "every town of Judea and of Jerusalem." They'd come from all over the nation. "And the power of the Lord was present to heal them." So these important people are there to listen, but there's a lot of sick people. There's a lot of hurting people who are there, and God's power is showing up on this particular day. Verse 18 says, "And behold, men brought in a bed, a man which was taken with the palsy." He couldn't get up, he couldn't walk. "And they sought means to bring him in and to lay him before him." So they wanted to get this guy to Jesus, but there's this big crowd. Verse 19 says, "And when they could not find by what way they might bring him in because of the multitude, they went up on the housetop." It was probably not a sloped roof like this. It was probably a flat roof. "And they let him down through the tiling with his couch into the midst before Jesus." So there's four guys, and somehow they get him up on this roof because they can't get through the door. And it says they tore up the roof in one of the Gospels. Here it says they took the tiling off, and they let him down right in the middle of the crowd, and he was right there before Jesus. Verse 20 says, "And when Jesus saw their faith," the faith of the four men, probably the faith of the guy with the palsy too, but the faith of the four men specifically, he saw their faith. How did he see their faith? Because of what they did. "And he said to them, Man, your sins are forgiven you." Now, it wouldn't seem that that would be the purpose for which they brought him. It would seem that the reason they brought him is so that he would be healed physically, right? He has a physical problem and he needs help. But that's not where Jesus starts. He says, "Your sins are forgiven." And the scribes, the Pharisees, those who were teachers of the law, the doctors of the law, they begin to reason, saying, "Who is this which speaks blasphemies? Who can forgive sins but God alone?" When Jesus perceived their thoughts, he not only saw the faith of the four men, but he saw what was in the hearts of these unbelieving religious people. He answered and said to them, "What reason ye in your hearts?" They didn't say it out loud to him, but he knew what they were thinking and what they were saying to each other. He said, "Which is easier, to say, 'Your sins are forgiven,' or to say, 'Rise up and walk'? But that you may know that the Son of Man has power upon earth to forgive sins," he said to the sick of the palsy, "I say unto thee, arise and take up thy couch and go into thine house." And immediately he rose up before them and took up that whereon he lay and departed to his own house, glorifying God. It doesn't appear that he went back through the roof. Apparently he went out the door. They made way for him to get out once he had been healed. And they were all amazed. All these doctors, all of these Pharisees, all of these scribes, the whole crowd, they were all amazed, and they glorified God and were filled with fear, saying, "We have seen strange things today." There's three things that Dr. Sexton points out from this particular story that I think is really noteworthy and worth remembering. He emphasizes the paralyzed man, the partners in service, and the power of God. And he extrapolates from this story of this miracle some applications for our own life. He points to the paralyzed man as an example of the lost all around us. This was a man who could not come to Christ. He was crippled. He couldn't get through the crowd. But somebody else had a burden for him, and that's point number 2. So we got the paralyzed man represents the lost world all around us who can't come to Christ without help. And then the partners in service, their faith is seen, their compassion is seen, their determination is seen in how they reacted to this situation. And of course, that's an example for us, right? We can partner together in order to reach others and to bring them to Christ. And then the power of God, not just to heal the lame man, but to forgive sins. The problem of this world that we live in today is not economic. It's not primarily medical problems that need to be fixed. It's not even, ethnic tensions or political problems. The problem is really not, somebody has too much power and they're abusing that power. Ultimately, the problem in this world is the problem of sin, and sin that needs to be forgiven. And the solution, of course, is Christ. How radical are you willing to be in order to get people to Christ? These guys tore up the roof in order to get their friend down to Jesus so that he could be healed. And he was healed, both spiritually and physically. Which one was the greater miracle?